Alright, are you ready to see my 2022 to be read pile? Or to be read books? There's a lot to get through. This is going to be a bit of a longer video, so bear with me. We're going to get through this, my 2022 to be read pile. So stay tuned if you want to see what I plan to read in 2022 coming right up here on Drew's Book Reviews. Alright, a new year, new books, new adventures, new friends to be made, and all these great books that I'm going to read this year in 2022. We're going to start with my biggest selection of books first, which will be my fantasy books that I'm going to read in 2022. Then we're going to move on to my science fiction, non-fiction, and fiction book selections for the year of 2022. So, definitely, let's get through this. A lot of books to get through. I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. So, before we get into that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, you can join me on my Discord as well as my Bookstagram, which will be linked below. So, this is in no particular order. So, you'll get the order essentially as I go through my monthly TBRs each and every month. But let's check this out. Let's see what I am going to read. This is going to be a mix of both rereads, leading up to the end of a series that I haven't finished yet, as well as first-time reads for 2022. So, let's talk about it. First on my reread selection is I'm going to reread The Lord of the Rings in 2022. I'm really looking forward to that because The Lord of the Rings is a classic of fantasy. If you haven't read it, why not? Especially if you're a fantasy fan. So I'm going to be rereading The Lord of the Rings, starting with The Hobbit, and then of course The Return of the Kings, The Two Towers, and The Fellowship of the Rings. We'll see if I decide to make a video on this. Don't know. Love the show, love the movies, love the books. Lord of the Rings is a classic, and a classic for good reason. So my plan is to reread The Lord of the Rings in 2022. Been a long time coming, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. Next up on my fantasy to be read pile for 2022 is picking up the end of the Shannara Chronicles. It's been a while since I've read Shannara, a long time actually, but I'm looking forward to getting into that with the Steel Assassin and The Last Druid, the triumphant conclusion to the Shannara saga. So this will be good because Terry Brooks and Shannara, again, one of my favorite book series that I read long before I started this channel. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into Shannara in 2022. These are going to be on my to be read pile, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to see how that wraps up. Next up we have Mark Lawrence. So picking up some Mark Lawrence with the Book of the Ancestors. So we've got, let's see here, what's the order? I'm getting them mixed up. We got the first book being Red Sister, the second book being Grey Sister, and finally finishing up with Holy Sister with Mark Lawrence's Book of the Ancestor series I've heard a lot about. So that is coming up on my 2BR for 2022. Can't wait to read that. It's going to be fun. Another one that I heard a lot about on BookTube is the Dragon Republic and the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So this is a Eastern inspired fantasy series. So looking forward to getting into that. Chinese, Eastern inspired fantasy. I've heard mixed reviews on this, but we'll see if I enjoy them. But the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic, I've heard good, so I'm going to go with that. Let's see if I enjoy it. I would love to have a more diverse fantasy reading repertoire, rather than just that, typical medieval knights and wizards type thing. So definitely looking forward to getting to the Poppy War come 2022 here this year. So that'll be fun. Now, this next series of books I read a long time ago, so I'm going back to the beginning to reread before I finalize it. And that is the Lightbringer Series, which I hope to get through in 2022. So again, been a long time since I've read Brent Weeks and his Lightbringer series of books. I have not yet read The Burning White, but I have read the previous four, so I want to go back and reread the previous four before I get onto The Burning White, because it's good to have that refresher when you're finally going into the end of a series. Mixed reviews on how the series ended. I'm looking forward to going back and rereading all of them. So of course, within the series, we're starting out with the Black Prism. Here, let me get a better on that. There you go. The Black Prism being the first one in the series, and of course followed up by the Blinding Knife being the second book in the series. Then we have The Broken Eye. These are actually pretty thick books. I mean, check that out. The Broken Eye will be the next one up on that, followed by The Blood Mirror, and then finishing up with The Burning White. So I'm looking forward to getting back into that for for 2022. I keep saying next year's 2022 already. Jeez. Okay, technically it's 2021 when I film this, but you get the gist of it. So some other ones that I'm going to be picking up: Edge Dancer from the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. I think I've actually already read this, but what the heck, I'll throw it on my TBR anyway because I didn't have the physical book at the time that I read it. And New Spring, I actually haven't read this yet, but I'm definitely going to, especially now the Wheel of Time TV series is out, and I've read and reread the Wheel of Time over and over and over again. So New Spring, looking forward to getting to that. That'll be a good one for sure. I have no doubt about it. Because, well, it's Wheel of Time, so why not, right? Might as well get all the stuff within there. Get that read. Haven't read that yet. I've got a second Mark Lawrence fantasy series that I'm picking up as well. This is the Broken Empire. So we've got, let's see here. Book 1 is the Prince of Thorns from the Broken Empire, followed up by Book 2, King of Thorns, and Book 3, Emperor of Thorns. So these ones have made my fantasy to be read pile for 2022. Another great set of books. Well, I don't know if they're great. I haven't read them yet, although people seem to like Mark Lawrence's writing. So hopefully I'll enjoy it as well. So there you go. That is coming up there. And of course I will be continuing on with the Joe Abercrombie, Before They're Hanged and the Last Argument of Kings. This will be coming up early this year, actually. So heard a lot about Joe Abercrombie. He's got some great stuff. Master of the Grimdark. I'm looking forward to finishing up this series. I started this series December, and I'll be finishing up through January and February. At least that's the plan. For Joe Abercrombie's good works. So I've heard, anyway. Now, there is one series which has just been a killer to get through. And I just decided I just want to bang it out and get it done. And that is Malazan, Book of the Fallen. So I've still got these left in this series. And this is just this is not the order of reading, of course, just pointing out the books. Of course, you got The Crippled God. Got Dust of Dreams as well. And we also got Toll the Hounds. Like, these are thick, massive books. I have no idea if I'm going to be able to get through them, but I'm going to try it, darn it. Reaper's Gale, of course. And then we also have The Bone Hunters, as well as Midnight Tides. Now, I don't know if I'm going to do separate reviews on each of these books, to be honest. But we'll see how I'm feeling about them. Most series, I usually do a review of every book in the series, but I don't think I want to do that here for these particular books, just because they're so big, they're so massive, and they are hard to get through, and it's falling on the ground. I'll grab that later. It can be tough, for sure. And then, of course, we do have Evan Winter. I've heard so much about Evan Winter, but I haven't actually got to his books, so I'm actually really looking forward to getting to Evan Winter's books in 2022. This is going to be fun and good and exciting. I'm looking forward to it. So we got The Rage of Dragons and we got The Fires of Vengeance. I've heard so many good things about these two books, and Evan Winter's writing. African-inspired fantasy. Love that concept. So looking forward to getting to these books because I've heard so many good things about them. And of course, one of the other series that I'm going to be getting through this year is, again, I'm going back and doing a reread of the Powder Mage World before I get on to the final book, which is The Blood of Empire. But of course, we have all these other books coming before that, which I want to do a reread first. So, starting off with The Promise of Blood. Powder Mage is a really interesting world, and where gunpowder plays a pivotal role in the magic system, which just makes it so much more entertaining, in my opinion. And then, of course, we have the Crimson Campaign as well. And then we've got the Autumn Republic within this Powder Mage world. And honestly, I love Brian McClellan's writing. It's just fantastic. Absolutely love it. Sins of Empire and Wrath of Empire. Now, to be clear, I'm not showing these books in the order you read them necessarily, just show them the books. But I am going to be rereading the series from start to finish this year. Really looking forward to it because it's going to be fun, entertaining all around. I mean, gunpowder and mages and crazy stuff. Who doesn't love that? I mean, I certainly do. Well, maybe not everybody, but I do. That's for sure. Absolutely. So, and of course, we'll be continuing on with the Discworld collection of books. So again, not in any particular order, but we got The Hogfather, we got The Wee Free Men, we got Night Watch, we got The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents, And then, of course, we got The Last Hero as well. Followed up, or not followed up necessarily, again, not in any particular order. We got The Truth, Thief of Time, another one coming up here, reading one per month. The Fifth Elephant, Carp Jugulum, The Last Continents as well. Discworld is just fantastic. If you haven't read it, definitely check that out. And of course, we got Jingo and Feet of Clay as well. So I'll be getting through the Discworld books in this year. At some point throughout the year, I will get through them all. I have no doubt about that. Alright, so now we go on to The White Sands. Now, most Sanderson fans don't tend to like this set of books as much as the others. The graphic novel series White Sands is part of the greater Cosmere, so I'm picking it up, all three of them. I'm going to get through them this year because I want to read all things Cosmere, and I haven't read this yet, so I gotta read it. That's why White Sands is on here. That's why I'm going to be reading White Sands this year. And finally, last in the fantasy section, and I'm grouping this with fantasy even though it's not technically fantasy, I'm grouping it with fantasy because if I were just doing a horror category, there'd only be the one. So I just threw it in fantasy. H.P. Lovecraft, collected works. I'm going to be reading through a little bit each and every month, as I mentioned in my brief preview video. Looking forward to telling you all about the awesome stories of H.P. Lovecraft as I get through this book in 2022. This will be fun and exciting and yay, lots of fun. So there you have it. There is my fantasy reads for 2022. Let's move on to my science fiction choices for 2022. Okay, so my science fiction to be read for 2022 is much, much smaller than my fantasy. So clearly I like fantasy more. Turns out. Anyway, I am going to be starting up on the Foundation book series. This is actually a reread technically because I did read it many years ago, but after the TV show came out, I wanted to get back into Foundation and read that series again. So I've got Foundation on the list, as well as Prelude to Foundation as well, and Foundation's Edge. At least I'm pretty sure that one's on it. Anyway, we'll find out later in the year. But anyway, I'll be starting into the Foundation book series again for the second time. But first time in decades, really. It's been a really long time since I've had the opportunity to actually read Foundation. So stay tuned for that. Some other ones are just pickups from essentially a sharing library around town that look like it might be somewhat interesting. So there's a book called Once a Hero, The Exile Waiting. I don't really know anything about these books, but you know, I do kind of want to read more sci-fi if I can. Out of Everywhere and Other Extraordinary Visions. So it just seems this is a bit kind of a collection of short stories. And another one called Up the Walls of the World. Undecided. So right now these are on my TBR for the year. I don't know if I'm going to keep them there because I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens, essentially. Also, I've got another book called The Andromeda Evolution. This is a novel by Daniel H. Wilson, but it's Michael Crichton, The Andromeda Evolution. Don't really know what it's all about necessarily, but I'm pretty sure this has something to do with the Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton, which is a fantastic book, by the way. Check it out if you haven't. So this one is on my to be read for 2022 as well. So looking forward to getting to that. And then the last sci-fi I've got on this list is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. So I've heard a lot about this book particularly, and it's kind of mathematical-based hard sci-fi is what I've heard about it. I'm looking forward to it. As I understand, there are sequels to this book, but I'm going to get this one first because I haven't read anything by this author before. Let's make sure it's one that I'm actually going to enjoy before I start picking up other books by Cixin Liu. But yeah, The Three-Body Problem is on my science fiction to-be-read list for 2022. So for my fiction reads for 2022, I've just got a couple on the list, not a whole lot. But, you know, I'm trying to read some more fiction, essentially. I've got Dispensation of Death, the Knights Templar Mystery. So again, this is something that I picked up at a local sharing library. So I don't know a whole lot about it. But, you know, it's a Knights Templar thing. I mean, that's something I've had somewhat of a passing interest in, and the historical reality behind that. I mean, I don't expect this to be historically accurate, of course. But Dispensation of Death, the Knights Templar Mystery. We'll see if I enjoy that. One of the other ones I have here are Indian Horse and Five Little Indians. So these are a couple of books written by First Nations First Nations authors here in Canada, and they're fictional stories based in the residential school system, or relating the experiences of the authors who had grown up in the residential school system here in Canada. So this will be a really interesting read. I'm looking forward to seeing that take and perspective in these books by Michelle Good and Richard Wagamis. So 5 Little Indians and Indian Horse. Should be some interesting reads. I'll probably be reading those in September, I expect. And another one that I also just found at a local sharing library. This is more of a mystery, essentially, but it's just One Evil Act. So it's a big, thick, large book. I don't know anything about this author, the story, or this type of writing style at all. So again, kind of broadened my reading beyond sci-fi and fantasy. So checking out this kind of murder mystery, we'll see how I enjoy that one. Just One Evil Act by Elizabeth George. We'll see how I enjoy that once I get to that later this year in 2022. So yeah, so not a lot of fiction, just a couple titles, but definitely trying to look at getting into more. And then of course that leads into what are my nonfiction reads for the year that I have planned. So of course I am trying to read one nonfiction per month. So let's talk a little bit about that now. Right, so let's talk about my nonfiction reads planned for this year. This is a bigger list, of course, but definitely looking forward to getting through all these books. So there's a few different subject matter involved with my nonfiction reads planned for next year, or not next year, this year, 2022. So what we have here is Kindred, Neanderthal, Life, Love, Death, and Art. So this is a really interesting one that I thought when I saw it at the bookstore about Neanderthals and their culture and where they came from, who they are, all that good stuff. Just really interesting and kind of delving into Neanderthals, our distant cousins. So I thought that would be an interesting read to kind of broaden my nonfiction categories, essentially. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. That'll be a good read. Also, I'm picking up several Mikhail Kaku books this year, actually, but The Future of Humanity is one of them, which I have here, Our Destiny in the Universe. This was on my recent book haul video back in December as well. But yeah, The Future of Humanity by Mikhail Kaku. Where are we going as a species? What's going to happen down the road, and how's that going to affect us? This is going to be a interesting read about our destiny, so definitely looking forward to that. I've also got a book called Forgotten Civilizations, New Discoveries in the Solar-Induced Dark Age. I thought this would be an interesting read to take a look at. I'm probably planning this one for December because it's the darkest time of the year, and it's, about solar-induced dark age. So why not? Let's check that out. Forgotten Civilizations, ancient history can definitely be an area that could be quite interesting if you haven't checked into that area. So I'm looking forward to that, seeing how Forgotten Civilizations and what this is all about. I mean, the title itself kind of intrigued me when I looked at that. Also looking at Mikhail Kaku's The God Equation, the quest for a theory of everything. So if there's one thing that is certainly common within the world of physics, is a unified theory of everything. I'm interested to see what Mikhail Kaku's take on that is. Probably pronouncing that wrong. I know Brian Greene's take on it. I've read a lot of his stuff. Let's see what his take is. That'll be good. Looking forward to checking that out as well. I'm also going to be reading CRISPR People, The Science and Ethics of Editing Humanity. So this is a book all about the moral and ethical implications of genetically engineering people. And that'll be really interesting to check into that, because there are a lot of moral and philosophical questions that arise when it comes to talking about genetic engineering and engineering people. So CRISPR People, is this the next stage of human evolution? That'll be fascinating to read for sure. And then, keeping in theme with the future, Physics of the Future, How Science Will Shape Human Destiny and Our Daily Lives by the Year 2100. Another Mikhail Kaku book. I'm really looking forward to checking that out. Again, future vision. I love reading stuff about the future and where we're going as people in science and technology and everything. So definitely future orientated. This seems like an interesting title. I'm checking it out for sure. I've also got Cosmic Queries with the famous Neil deGrasse Tyson, Star Talk's Guide to Who We Are, How We Got Here, and Where We're Going. So a book on cosmology. If you have been watching this channel and seen my nonfiction books, you know definitely the physics and space and cosmology and all that stuff is an area that's of a lot of interest to me. So I'm kind of just gobbling up the books I could find on that. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, of course, being one of those celebrity scientists that, focuses in these areas. So yeah, Cosmic Queries by Neil deGrasse Tyson. One of the other books I'd heard a little bit about is Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now, The Case for Reason, Science, Humanism, and Progress. So I picked this up and I look forward to reading it this year, and it'll be fun to kind of see where that goes as far as, the case for reason, science, humanism, and progress. I'm all for humanism, all for science, all for progress. What is Steven Pinker's take on it, and what does he mean by Enlightenment Now? I don't know. Look forward to reading it and finding out. And of course, we also have another interesting title called Gory Details, The Adventures from the Dark Side of Science. So this has to do with the science of crime and the nitty-gritty details we don't really want to think about, but how does forensic work? What's the science behind that? So I thought, hey, that sounds like it might be interesting. Gory details, the kind of stuff we don't usually like to think about. We'll check that out. Next is another really interesting one. This one is Chris Hadfield's An Astronaut's Guide to Life. So if you know who Chris Hadfield is, he is probably the most famous Canadian astronaut that has ever lived, and he wrote a book about an astronaut's guide to life on Earth, which is just fantastic. Chris Hadfield has been entertaining for sure. Rocket Man, just look at Rocket Man Chris Hadfield on YouTube. He's got a whole music video of him singing Rocket Man in the International Space Station, playing his guitar, just floating around. Pretty cool thing. Chris Hadfield, he is definitely somebody I want to read. I'd love to hear his take on life as an astronaut and his guide to life on Earth. So when I saw that, definitely had to grab it, of course. And along those lines of space exploration, the search for life on Mars, the greatest scientific detective story of all time. So we are still searching for life on Mars, of course. Mars is a planet that has been fascinating us for thousands of years, and the science is getting really interested in that. We know there are plans being rolled out in place with an attempt to hopefully colonize Mars. So let's take a look at life on Mars. Does it exist? Has it ever existed? Can we find evidence of that? And where is that going? That's going to be an interesting tale to recount, and I'm looking forward to reading that. And the last book on my nonfiction to be read pile for 2022 is Editing Humanity. So this is going to be another one, kind of go along the lines of CRISPR People, discussing the same subject matter. We'll see how the two different authors have a different viewpoint on this particular issue. That'll be fun. Editing Humanity, again, getting into genetics and engineering and all that good stuff. The CRISPR revolution and the new era of genome editing. I look forward to reading this as well. Definitely an area that has sparked my interest as far as CRISPR technology and genetics. So looking forward to reading that. So if you managed to stick through this video through until the end, there you have it. There's my complete planned to be read plans for 2022. Big pile, over 70 books. Thank you so much for sticking it through and watching through to the end. I definitely appreciate it. And as always, let me know what you think of any of these books. What are you reading on this pile? Have you read any of them? Do you plan to read? Do any of them look interesting to you? Let me know in the comments down below, or join me over on the Discord and my Bookstagram as well. Those will be linked below. And thank you so much for watching. And of course, until next time, keep on reading. Bye.